Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit ActiveDay.com to apply.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, my friends, my Indiana Pacers are down 3-2. Don't want to say much about it. They lost last night, Game 5, to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who's a very, very good team, as I've said many times on this program. They are tough to beat. I still have hope that the Pacers can pull this thing out, but the odds are certainly stacked against them. Halliburton played atrociously. He was injured. I don't know to what extent. Anyway, it's they let. I didn't mention this yesterday. I should have. I don't know why I wasn't in Pacer mindset on yesterday's program, but they should have won. They let Game 4 slip away. They could have taken a 3-1 commanding lead, and now they are trailing 3-2. So that's all I care to say about that at the moment, my friends. Got lots to get into. I want to talk about regime change. I want to talk about Trump's message on Truth Social. Things are getting things have gotten and maybe will be staying at a very, very intense level around the world with what's happening. Talk about some of those things here in the stack of stuff. By the way, if you're new to the program, you can go to the stack of stuff and you can see some of the things that we'll talk about, links to articles and so forth. This is a hat tip. The name of it, anyway, is a hat tip to the late, great Rush Limbaugh, who had a physical stack of stuff back when he started his program. We've got a digital stack of stuff on the website at toddhuffshow.com. So that's where we're headed today, my friends. But before we get started, I want to ask you this. Do you take more care of your car, your truck, your vehicles? You put more planning into the maintenance of that than you do to your own health, to your own heart health, for example. We change oil in the car, the truck, rotate the tires, do other maintenance to keep things running smoothly. But when it comes to our health, sometimes we don't put in the same level of planning and maintenance and forethought and effort. And I understand, for some of us, maybe even for many of us, thinking about these things reminds us of our own mortality. So it's not always the most pleasant thing, but friends, it's a necessary step, especially as we age. That's why I take Solti. Solti's an all-natural, clinically proven dietary supplement that lowers cholesterol safely. It's been proven to do this for lots of folks. It may be able to help you as well. Takes care of your heart. No prescriptions, no doctor visits, just 2 Solti soft gels a day. That's all it takes, my friends. So don't put it off. Start taking care of yourself today. Solti.com, that's the website. Use promo code Todd. You'll save 50% on your first order, and you'll get free shipping on top of that. That's Solti.com, SOLTEA, Solti.com, promo code Todd. Your heart deserves better, my friends, and so do you. All right, so let's get to the news of the day. So we know now, and we knew this maybe yesterday, even as, when I produce the show every day, it's in the morning time, and so sometimes there's things that come out during the course of the day that I wasn't aware of or hadn't been revealed in the news of the day. Sometimes things are said throughout the day on news networks that don't turn out to be true and all that stuff, filtering through that. But it's been reported now, that Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted to take out Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. So this, I was talking about this yesterday, and I gotta correct myself. This is the Islamic Republic of Iran that we're talking about. It's a theocracy. It's a theocratic state. What does that mean? It basically means that the way that a nation is governed would be in accordance with a particular faith. In this case, the Islamic faith. And the Islamic faith and the traditions, there are certain levels of scholars, if you will. I guess that's the term. For depending upon where you rank in being able to take the faith and apply it in a theocratic sense. And so there are different levels. The supreme leader is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's an Ayatollah. That's the highest level of Shia clerics. So this is specifically, so again, I don't want to get into Shia versus Sunni and all of that stuff, but this is one particular interpretation of Islam. You have the Shia and you have the Sunni. And in Iran, they're run by the Shia. The top supreme leader is an Ayatollah, the highest level cleric from the Shia division of the Muslim faith. And then beneath them, there are mullahs. Mullahs are Islamic clerics. And so I referenced the Ayatollahs. Now, there are other Ayatollahs within Iran as well, but typically when you're referring to those who are governing Iran, you refer to the supreme leader here, who's the Ayatollah, and the mullahs who are underneath, I guess, so to speak. And I said the Ayatollahs, although there are multiple Ayatollahs in Iran. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that a little bit as we talk about this, because Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has wanted to kill. In fact, there's been reports that he has told Trump he wants to take out Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, Trump has reportedly said no to this. Do not do this. This is an unnecessary sort of situation. Now, let's talk about this for a moment, because you may have heard people talking about regime change. For those of us who have been around for some time, we remember things in the past where the United States government has been involved in regime change. Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, we were told back in the early 2000s, in the post 9/11 world, which let's just set that up for a moment, right? Let's go back to 9/11. Prior to 9/11, we had been targeted by jihadists, by Islamic terrorists, by Islamic fascists, Islamofascists. The World Trade Center had been targeted a couple of times. We had the USS Cole. We had U.S. military bases that were targeted. But it wasn't really until 9/11 when we got hit with a full-scale attack by the radical Islamo-fascist terrorists, the Al-Qaeda division, which was led by Osama bin Laden. I know some of you out there listening to my voice believe 9/11 was an inside job and all that sort of stuff. That's not where I come down on this. But 9/11 was orchestrated by Islamic fundamentalist, Islamofascist, Islamic terrorists, because the United States, they think that they're justified in taking out the United States, but because the United States has gone into the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia, the home of Mecca and Medina, two of the holiest sites for the Islamic faith, that and, of course, Jerusalem, which is where the Dome of the Rock is. I mean, this stuff runs deep, my friends. This whole thing is Jewish faith, Islamic faith, Christian faith, Abraham, Isaac, Abraham, Ishmael, holy sites, fight over the holy site of Jerusalem, Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount. The Dome of the Rock, which is an Islamic mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque, I believe is the name of that. It's built on the site of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which is where God instructed the Israelites when they returned, when they built the city of Jerusalem. That's where the temple was built. This is where God's presence was, during Old Testament times, if you will, when God made himself, his presence, when he united with his people in the holy city of Jerusalem. This is where, there's just so many fascinating things about this to me. And it has an impact on what we're dealing with today. Now, some people will say that it has more of an impact than I say. Some will say it has less of an impact than I say. There's opinions all over the board here. But these things can be traced back to these fundamental differences, critical differences between three of the world's most well-known faiths: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. But you go back to the temple, and that's, of course, where God made his presence known. There's a place inside the temple called the Holy of Holies. It was visited once a year by the high priest. That was, that's where he went for the annual atonement, for sacrificing for the sins of the people. That's where he went. He went beside that curtain. That curtain, by the way, was torn in two immediately upon the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, symbolizing that there was no longer a separation between God and his people. There was no longer need for a mediator, the high priest, to step in and to atone for the sins of the people, because that sin had been atoned for by the blood of his son, Jesus Christ. There's so many just mind-blowing things that happen here. By the way, that area where the Temple Mount is also the same series of hills where one Abraham would have taken his son Isaac up the mountain to sacrifice him. According to what we read in the book of Genesis, Muslims say that Abraham took Ishmael up the mountain to sacrifice him. And so you see this conflict, and it truly goes back. Some of this conflict goes back to that point in time. Now, there's other factors. There's modern factors and tensions and general tensions between different faiths and so forth, and this fight over the holy city, and just some of the violence that's been initiated primarily against the Jewish people, although the Jewish people are not without fault either. They're not perfect people by any stretch of the imagination. So you have this tense situation, and you've got faith involved. No matter how much people don't want to admit this should be absolutely part of this narrative. Iran is a Muslim republic. Israel is a Jewish state. And America, you can say whatever America is. America was founded upon Christian principles. Not a Christian theocratic state, but certainly a nation that was founded by people who believed in Jesus, who believed in biblical principles and truth, and still has people who believe those things living inside this great nation. Of course, you have folks who hate vehemently the Christian faith, Christians, and unfortunately the God of Christianity as well. And there's this tension that at its core has a religious component. And so you've got that fueling this, but you've also got, modern concerns and militaries and nuclear weapons. And so so you go back to 9/11, and this, again, it's not the same group of people, but it's the same general groups of people, the same faith that's involved. You can say that it's a mischaracterization of the Islamic faith, but there's no doubt that Osama bin Laden and those 19 terrorist hijackers who jumped on airplanes on September 11th, 2001 and crashed them into the Pentagon and the World Trade Towers and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, headed to somewhere in Washington, D.C., targeting the Capitol building, the White House, wherever. You can certainly see that that's when America was awakened to what we were really fighting against on that level. The amount of hatred. We were going through the 80s and 90s. I mean, we had gotten through the Cold War. America was at a prosperous time. The stock market was hitting all-time highs. It was a good time to be an American. Even with Clinton in the White House, there were still a lot of good things happening in this country. And I think that the prosperity kind of made us complacent. And on 2001, we paid a tremendous price. And suddenly we realized, or came to the realization, or a lot of Americans finally realized how much we were hated by certain people around the world. And so we went from a mindset of we're going to mind our own business and just live it up and have a good time and not pay close attention to, we're going to go out and find the people who are trying to attack this nation before they decide to launch a strike against us. And so, and understandably so, that's the other thing. We made wrong decisions and conclusions and all that, but it's an understandable situation, right? I remember when Bush, after the trade towers had fallen and there was a rescue mission, and Bush went to ground zero and he had the megaphone, and he said something, and someone said, "We hear you, Mr. President," or something like that, or "I can't hear you." And President Bush said, the whole world's about to hear us. The whole world's about to hear what's coming, because we're going to go get the people who made this mess, this pile of rubble, all of this death and destruction, the shutdown, in a sense, of our nation. We're coming for them real soon, and they're going to know when we get there. You might remember, if you're a country music fan, a song written in the wake of 9/11 by Toby Keith called "The Angry American," where he talks about Americans who were maybe sucker punched by what happened on 9/11. But once we got our bearings straight, we said, let's go find the people who did this, who are responsible for this, whose ideology fuels this stuff, and let's go get these folks who are engaged in what they believe is a holy war against the United States of America and the rest of the free world, who chant death to America, death to Israel. Let's go get these people, get rid of them the best that we can. And so we were on a mission. And again, understandably so. And then comes this Saddam Hussein weapons of mass destruction sort of position with Dick Cheney and all these, the presentation before Congress saying that, look, Saddam Hussein has these weapons of mass destruction. We know Saddam Hussein's not a good dude. He invaded Iran back in 1980. We fought a war against him in the early 90s. And so this was roughly 10 years after that. We knew what Saddam Hussein was capable of. We'd heard the stories. We knew that Uday and Qusay, I think that were their names, his sons that were brutally terrorizing other Iraqis. They were torturous. They were evil. They were wicked. And so we decided to go on the offensive against Iraq based upon this idea that they had weapons of mass destruction and that they were preparing to use them in a similar type of terrorist attack or some sort of attack on the United States of America. And so we went. And lo and behold, we never really found anything to justify the rationale and the reasons that we went there. There there was never really that smoking gun, and people think that this was used as an excuse by the administration to go finish the job against Saddam Hussein and all this sort of stuff. Other people might say, well, we were just wrong on the intelligence. Whatever the case, this has echoes with Iran and Israel today, echoes of this today. Now, this is a bit of a different scenario, I would certainly say. There's been concern and clamor about Iran having a nuclear weapon for some time. There has been a lot of talk, a lot of doomsday talk that Iran was days, weeks, months, years away from having a nuclear weapon. But we've had people, we had the Iran deal that was put into place by Barack Obama. We had the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, I believe is what that stands for, who have, verified some of these things. So we know that they're working towards a nuclear weapon. We know that they have been able to enrich uranium. Maybe not, maybe we can't prove to weaponized levels, but closer to weaponized levels than they could in the past. Iran has threatened the nation of Israel. Iran hates Israel. Again, the leaders of Iran. I'm not talking about the people. By the way, that's something else in this story that needs to be, which I guess we'll get to when we talk about regime change and what's really happening here. But you've got Iran, who the people want their liberty and their freedom. They've been living under an oppressive regime led by the mullahs and the supreme leader since the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Right? They lived under the Shah prior to that. The United States CIA was involved in, part of this problem, leading us to a situation where there was an Iranian revolution. The mullahs took over. They became an Islamic republic. They've been brutalizing their own people, instituting Sharia law, cutting off people's hands for stealing, all sorts of stuff like this, ruled with an iron fist, have the morality police out there that are abusing and terrorizing people. And all of this stuff is just festering, right? It's festering. And at the top of that leadership of that country, you've got this guy, Ali Khamenei, the Ayatollah. And Israel is of the opinion that we must get rid of him because he's the one who is going to continue to pursue this no matter what we do. Look, these are folks that, the town that I grew up in, at least when I was a kid anyway, or at least this is the way I think about it and the way that I still operate. You have a handshake agreement, pat each other on the shoulders, and that's how you deal with people. Your word is your bond. But these Iranian leaders have used these negotiations in the past to buy time to pursue nuclear weapons, to give themselves cover, because once they have it, they've told us what they want to do with it. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. Their hatred for Israel is no secret. Their hatred for the United States is no secret. Having a nuclear weapon in the hands of these folks would be a devastating scenario. And I've got to take a time out, my friends. Sit tight. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So, you've got a tinder box. You've got the ingredients for a lot of tension. You've got different faiths, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. You have different versions or visions for how to govern a state, whether it's the Western sort of approach with liberty and freedom and opportunity, or it's the heavy-handed approach of the Iranian dictators who took over that country in 1979 through the Iranian Revolution. And you've just got a scenario where there's hatred that goes back thousands of years in some cases between the folks running, the mullahs running Iran, and the Jewish state of Israel. The mullahs hate Israel. Keep in mind, by the way, Israel has had nuclear weapons for some time. They've not nuked Iran. Iran has threatened, if they get nuclear weapons, to use them against Israel, to wipe them off the face of the planet. And so I would think, and this is President Trump's position, the Islamic Republic of Iran has no business with nuclear weapons. They are madmen running the country. Again, this is not talking about the people who are seeking their freedom. It's a wonderful, beautiful people that have been oppressed for a long time, suffering under the hands of the mullahs and the supreme leader, Ayatollah, here running the nation of Iran today. And so you have a scenario that I don't know of anybody who would say that Iran should have, well, I do know that they're out there, but I don't know anyone who has the slightest understanding of what I just was talking about, the level of hatred that Iran has for Israel, the level of insanity that this government that runs Iran actually has. And I'm saying these things not to say that we need to go to war. I'm saying that the concept, the idea of Iran having a nuclear weapon is something that we should universally say no to. Now, yesterday, I made the comment, and I stand by this. You know, if you're in a particular country and you say, hey, I want to have this weapon to defend myself, I certainly understand why you would say it's no one else's business to tell me I can't have that weapon. You have it. I understand that thinking. But I also understand context is king. And you don't want to give nuclear weapons to madmen. You may have seen, if you follow the news closely, Kim Jong-un now in North Korea. There's concern. Japan's concerned about military problems with North Korea now. North Korea keeps lobbing missiles over Japan, which they do from time to time. They have nuclear capabilities. They were not supposed to have nuclear capabilities because Bill Clinton signed a piece of paper and made a pinky promise with Kim Jong-il back in the 90s when Clinton was president, where they promised and pledged that they would not have nuclear weapons. And here we are, lo and behold. I think we should at least try to learn from that sort of situation and scenario. Unfortunately, it appears that half the world doesn't even know that that was a story, that doesn't even know that that's how that came about. Half the world is of the opinion that the bad guys are Israel, which is crazy. But those of us who are sane understand that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Now, does that mean war is the only solution? Well, it doesn't mean that theoretically. But what happens? What happens if Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon? They're days or weeks away from having it. There's been earthquakes, quote unquote earthquakes, registering on the Richter scale that we believe are nuclear tests by Iran. So, multiple things can be true at once. For example, Israel can see that. Netanyahu can say that and say, look, this is the red line. This is the final line in the sand. We cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. That will destabilize the region. That will put my country, Netanyahu would say, in great jeopardy because they want death and destruction to my nation. They'll have a weapon that if they lob it into my country would just level us, put us, just take us completely out. That's unacceptable. And these are the types of people based upon past behavior that would do it, this particular regime and leadership. And so if you realize they're that close and you realize that they use a delay game, right, to buy time, now they're talking about wanting to go back to the negotiating table, to which Netanyahu says, why would I do that? Why would I do that? That's why he's pressing for the murder, the killing of the Ayatollah. Headline here, New York Post, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu won't rule out killing Iran's supreme leader, says it would, quote, end the conflict. Now, other people would say, well, this is awfully convenient. Israel, Netanyahu, have wanted to see new leadership in Iran for some time. Again, this becomes a discussion about regime change. And is this what the United States wants to be involved with? Is this what the United States, whether we're directly or indirectly, we're an ally of someone else that wants to pursue regime change? Is this the path that we want to go? Some people say this is the intent all along. This was the plan all along. But at the same time, that may have been the plan, but listen, we got here because of a series of events that I think we should all agree on, which is Iran is very close to having the capability, and maybe they do, I don't know, of creating and using a nuclear weapon, which is unacceptable. So now you're in this situation, where Israel says, look, we can't wait any longer. Iran is on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. We have to take out their ability to deploy it. They send in their aircraft. They fire missiles. They take out. Look, Iran is in a mess right now. Israel's certainly been struck a few times, and it's certainly sad as to what's happened here. But Iran is losing this conflict. Iran is losing this conflict. Trump's, of course, in the G7 summit in Canada. He leaves early to come back to the United States. They're having a meeting in the Situation Room, which is, that doesn't sound good, right? You got all these rumors of Iranian sleeper cells potentially in the United States, other Islamo-fascist sleeper cells here in this country. The stakes are high. And, you got Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon types out there that are saying the United States should not be engaged in regime change, should not, which I'm not saying we should be. I'm just saying, there are conservatives who say tap the brakes, which nobody wants to get into. Well, there's probably some warmongers out there that do, but most of us don't want to get into a war. But also, we know that Iran having a nuclear weapon, if nothing was done by Israel to strike Iran, and they had a nuclear weapon today, the world would be a much different place. So what do? Trump keeps telling Netanyahu, according to reports, I do not take out the supreme leader. And Netanyahu's position is this is the only way out of this scenario. The Iranian people are wanting, they've been oppressed. They've not been able to form their own government. They've been basically living in subjection to these folks since 1979. I'll read a bit from this article here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Monday that assassinating Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would, quote, end the conflict between the two nations after President Trump reportedly urged him not to do it. It's not going to escalate the conflict. It's going to end the conflict, Netanyahu told ABC News correspondent Jonathan Karl in an interview, arguing that Khamenei is like a modern Hitler. That's what Netanyahu says. Other folks say, listen, you can't sit there and demonize these other leaders around the world. Sure, this guy might not be great, but don't talk about him in terms where you're justifying potentially the beginning of World War III. Netanyahu said his country was doing what we need to do when asked if Israel would target Khamenei, while noting that Iran's government allegedly plotted to assassinate Trump and himself. That's another, those are rumors that have been spreading for some time. That seems absolutely legitimate to me, the sort of thing that they've considered doing, talked about doing, planning to do. I think there was some trash talk online about that at some point. Anyway, more to say on this, but I've got to take a time out. Friends, if you're in sales, let me ask you, are you where you want to be? Because if you're not, I've got a way to get you there. Matt Easton and Easton University can help you, whether you are a brand new salesperson, a seasoned pro looking to improve your skills, whether you're an entrepreneur looking to build a sales team, improve your own skill set, whether you're a sales manager tasked with making sure your sales team performs better. Matt Easton and Easton University can help you do that. If you follow the system, I firmly believe it will pay off. I think this is one of the best programs, if not the best in the business. But you've got to take that first step. Go to toddhuffshow.com/Easton, toddhuffshow.com/Easton. And as a bonus, by signing up to be a student there, you'll get a welcome call from Matt himself, where he will walk you through the specific challenges that you have and help you get on track. toddhuffshow.com/Easton. Quick timeout, my friends. Back in a minute. The context of this whole scenario paints the picture. And I find myself thinking about these things. I just finished I'd read the Bible before, but the first time I'd gone through a program per se, this Bible recap. In fact, I restarted it. I'm going to do this, probably repeat it, well, on a regular basis. How about I say that? It's a great study. You can get it for free and all that on the Bible app. You can buy curriculum too. But it's a great program. And as I read, and you think about the end times and all that sort of stuff, nation rising against nation, and these nations that are mentioned in the Bible by their old names, and one of those, it's commonly believed, is referring to Iran. And as I look at this and I think, well, first of all, if God speaks it, it's going to happen. But I also think, I believe that, by the way, but I still find myself wondering and thinking sometimes, even if these nations knew and believed some of these which of course some of these prophecies, no one really knows. I know some people really think that they've got all the answers and tell you the time and all that. I could not be further from that. I don't know. And there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of, it's complicated. But I find myself also realizing the level and the complexity of this situation. In some ways, I think when I was a younger Christian, I would think, well, why don't they just not do that? But I think this is so deep and pulling at so many levels that this collision course that the Jewish state has with other people around the world, and I'm not blaming, I'm just saying the scenario, like this scenario here, is so deep and so intertwined, and it's just very, very complicated, and hard to see a way out that doesn't involve instances like this. The hatred in some cases is so deep. So you've got people out there who are saying we shouldn't engage in war, which I'm not arguing for war, but at the same time, we cannot, under any circumstances, allow the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. Do we? Is there a red line there? Do we allow them to? Are there certain things we won't do or wouldn't allow Israel to do to prevent them from doing it? Apparently killing the supreme leader is one of those things. Which again, now you're to the point of Israel may have a point here. This administration, this regime, has shown no interest to engage in goodwill dialogues. When your starting point of a negotiation is the annihilation of your enemy, it's hard to come out with a negotiated settlement, and that's where Iran is. So to Netanyahu's point, it becomes clear to me that this is not going to get solved under this regime, but then at the same time, do you want to take the step? Do we want them to take the step by letting him or giving him the green light? And by the way, they don't necessarily even need the green light from us. They might do it and just deal with the consequences. Ultimately, what are we going to do? We're not going to cease to be their ally. Well, some people think that we will at some point abandon them. It's complicated, again, but they're thinking about their existence. Israel, by the way, is the size of New Jersey. Israel's the size of New Jersey, my friends. This is something that I think is hard for the average American to grasp, the tininess of that Jewish state and the number of, metaphorical and literal guns that are pointed their direction by people who literally loathe their very existence. Make no mistake, when they chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they mean free of any Jewish people. And so Netanyahu says the only way that we can ever really be sure about this is if we stop this regime, if we take out, cut off the head of the snake. The people are primed. The people, by the way, I think are ready. A lot of them are. Again, it's always more complicated than that. Some of them, this is all that they know, and they want familiarity, and they don't want to, go through the process of trying to form a new government. And what does that look like? How unstable will the region be? Will that make matters worse? Will there be rogue agents who, can get their hands on some weapons and cause like other terrorist organizations, havoc for Israel as well and other peaceful people around the region, that region of the world. I mean, this could get very, very messy and complicated. But I think Netanyahu, Israel's perspective and position on this is pretty simple. We just don't want to be dealing with a country who hates us. We've proven over the course of many decades now that we can live peacefully alongside them so long as they don't try to provoke us or try to endanger us in the pursuit of nuclear weapons. They can chant death to Israel, but if they start getting weapons that they chant death to Israel with, that's a different story. I don't know, my friends. This is a complicated situation. I can certainly see the dangers and the thinking on both sides, but that's where we are. Friends, I got to wrap up here. But before I go, let's face it, there are a lot of companies out there that don't share our Christian values. The good news, we don't have to invest in them. At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. They'll help screen out companies that go against Christian values, Christian beliefs, and create a plan that's tailored for your goals. And they'll handle the heavy lifting so you can focus on what really matters. If you want to see what your current investments, whether they align with your values or not, go to 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd, because values matter and so does our money, my friends. I got to go. SDG.